I grew up in Helena, Montana, and which was a gold rush town, so it had amazing 19th century architecture in it. Also, I grew up next to the Archie Bray Ceramics Foundation, and was a young student with ceramicists like Ken Ferguson, Pete Bolkus. So I was exposed to ceramics as a way of working with material and working with form and space from a very early age on. In high school and after high school, I worked for a year as a carpenter, and then I went back to school in Montana, which in the late 70s, early 80s was an architecture school in the middle of nowhere. So the first lectures we saw were Buckminster Fuller, Ant Farm, Bruce Goff, people like this. And then went back to graduate school at Harvard in the late 80s. Moneo encouraged us to begin our own work as soon as possible, not to work for someone else, which was my idea in the beginning of going to graduate school. The Berlin Wall had come down in '89. My partner, Regina Leibinger, was from Stuttgart. For me, at that time, Berlin was the place to be. I was already a licensed architect. It was the more interesting path to move to Europe and not go back to the States and work. It seemed like a more vital, compelling place, particularly Berlin at the time, to start a practice. Irina's from Stuttgart. She's from a family of industrialists. The introduction to technology, fabrication was really through her family and her company. So we started to build factories for them, and as we were building factories for them, we learned about their technologies, other companies also in Germany, their technologies, and how to assimilate, appropriate these kinds of technologies for making architecture. There was a quote we used from Moneo about how you treat materials is how you come up with an architectural project. So I think there is a consistency through the work that has to do with materials and tools, how you use these things. So I think in terms of the identity of the practice, I think that's certainly a significant one. And we learned that by building factories. Architecture education works so well in a vacuum. I think having an understanding of these impulses, whether they're economic, sustainable, material, development, political, to kind of give that a realpolitik, I think, has always been our goal. And again, we teach because we're curious, not because we want to show everybody how to do things, but to find things out. It's a search. We tend to work in a way which is extremely inclusive, and there's often we're combining different levels and skills of craftsmanship into one building, which again I think gives a lot of our work the kind of dynamic or complexity in a way. So there's no preference for one over the other. Rice was always an incubator for architecture for years and years. In a way, there's constantly something being built here. We were brought to the interview process by Sarah Whiting based on our expertise with timber construction, which we are applying. So Hanson will be a prefabricated timber construction, which we see as something as light, fast, sustainable. It will be combined with brick facades, which is historical. Sid Rich is quite different. It was really, for me, more of an urban project, about a project which could mediate between Main Street, the scale of the high-rises, the medical center there, and a campus quad. So as a building, it's an ensemble of 3 components, 3 volumes. It's a high-rise, so we weren't able to use timber construction. It didn't meet code. Well, I think we can continue to provoke or test or challenge the limits on that. I mean, it was fantastic to be part of that conversation. But the approaches are quite different for the two projects.